What's going on, everyone? My name's Obi. I'm a NIO enthusiast and investor. Welcome back to the Courtside Financial Podcast, the podcast where we talk about business and technology. On today's episode, we're going to be addressing the situation around the tariffs regarding Chinese electric vehicles. And we have a special guest, a returning guest. You guys have asked for him by popular demand. He's also just come back from NIO, where he got to test drive a vehicle. So I'm hoping he can share a little bit about that as well. But welcome everyone, Marty with Media Now to the channel. How are you doing, Marty?
Hello, good to be back, Obi. Good to see you. Um, I've been watching your videos; they look pretty good. So,
You-
looking forward to answering some of your questions.
Yeah, awesome. It's great to have you back. Everyone was like, we got to get Marty back on here. We want to hear, what he thinks is going on. And obviously, they have a lot of questions. We're not going to address all of them today. One of the biggest questions I'm getting from people that they want to hear from you is about the share price because no matter how you spin it, no matter how you cut it, it's not pretty. But that's not something that we're concerned about. And we can address that today. We can address that in a later video. But do you have any thoughts on that
Well,
right
real quick, there's nothing who's anyone who's a retail long in Neo can do with the share price right now, because everybody knows it's completely bogus. And it's as long as there's people who are willing to sell upticks, SNDs, uh, or have shares that they can sell, that they can dump, bring the price down, pull in as many stops as possible, and just keep ringing the bell for 4 or 5 cent, 4 or 5% trades. They're going to do it as long as they can. I'm pretty sure that the people that are able to do that are probably the people who bought the convertible. And what they want to do is they want to convert those shares at the lowest price possible and then ride NEO up as far as they can. It's real simple to explain, or rationalize. It's Wall Street at work, and that's how it operates. As long as I won't say that NEO will never go up until it makes a profit. That's their scam. I mean, that's the thing. Whenever a short or a basher wants to work, the first thing they say is it's they don't make any profit, and it's not it's reality. They don't make it. They aren't making profit. We also know that they are now on a pretty steady basis generating tremendous amount of revenue. I don't know the exact price of every Neo that gets delivered, but when you're doing on a steady basis 20,000 vehicles, EVs a month, these are premium vehicles. People need to realize that the Neo is an upscale vehicle. It is not. It is far more expensive than a Tesla, and so the vehicles are finally selling. That's a really positive sign. Three consecutive three consecutive months of 20 plus. Um, Q2 looks like it's going to be tremendous on the revenue side, and on the delivery side, we don't know how much they spent to build Envos. That's another way that the funds can play with Neo, because they know they're spending a lot of money. I get really pissed off when I read somebody saying Neo's losing money. They're not losing money. They're investing to build a moat that their competition is going to have one hell of a time getting across. The Onvo with the current Neo line is going to be probably the most short of a van. Of course, they have SUVs. They have a saloon. They have sedans. And now they're going to have a sub 30K vehicle that's a full line. That's right from Toyota Corolla territory all the ways up, probably high Cadillac, um, Mercedes, BMW, of course, Audi. They easily match an Audi. I just came back from, I was in San Jose. I was at NEO headquarters. I'll have some video to show you. I have to get it cleared through NEO before I can show it. But I can tell you, I drove an ET5 and an ET7, and you're getting anyone who buys those vehicles is getting their money's worth. tremendous quality, tremendous performance. You'll see when you see my video. That's all
So
I could say.
let me
The
ask you this.
performance and the fit, the finish, the features, the tech, it's all in there. If all I could tell you right now, if Neos were for sale today in the United States, I would not have to be going too far to say they would have a hard time keeping them in stock.
So
As far as in San Jose, where they're made right now, and that group of people, that class of people, the big cities, Boston, L.A., New York, Neo. If I took that car anywhere, I'd sell it in 2 seconds. Either one, an ET5 and ET7, it would go. Now I think you wanted to talk a little bit about taxes. And
let's stick on that for a second. You kind of answered this question, but this is a follow-up to what you just said. After driving a Neo, after really putting it to the test, I'm assuming you did that while you were out there.
oh yeah,
Are you more bullish or are you more bearish on
I'm
Neo?
bullish. I'm bullish, and I the good thing is that NIO at this point in time, the USA has virtually nothing to do with NIO. They have, of course, they have headquarters, designers, uh, supply chain people here, a very excellent staff here. But right now, they're not for sale in the United States. So the sentiment, what's happening in the United States is polar opposite of what's happening in China, where the incentives from the government are continuing. People love them. The adaptation of them, the adopting of them is off the charts compared to USA for now. That government, the Chinese government, treated the EV industry far better than the American government, and the European government is treating it for now. All of that can change very quickly. Nothing to do with politics. It has a lot more to do with the market demand, um, trying to keep Chinese EVs out of the United States or any other country out of the United States is a losing game. The government's going to realize it. The car companies already do realize it. If they could do more business with Asia, they can move. They could probably do a lot better in EVs. That being said, I'll tell you something. Tonight, in watching my news that I watch at night, I saw Lexus with an EV commercial. Chevrolet during the Olympics ran their entire line of what they're doing at EVs, and BMW. These are all things that I've seen in the past 24 hours. So if the market is that terrible, I don't think these major companies will be putting money into it. What's happening is the goings on at Tesla are echoing through the media, especially through people who are stock who play the market. Okay, personally, I'm not a day trader, but there's people in this world that don't care if NIO stays in the fours, in the threes, and goes back and forth 15 cents every day. They could live on that. People who are really investors, believe in the company and all, trust me, our day is coming really soon. I believe that November, December, a few months of on the go with the NIO ET lines and the ES lines moving, we're going to start seeing traction as far as them actually going into profitability. The second NIO is that Wall Street, Beijing, Berlin believe that NIO is for sure going to be a profitable company. Happy days will be here again, and they're not that far off.
Markets are cyclical, and I think a company like NIO and their share price could also be cyclical. We've had a huge run in NIO stock before. I think that day will come again, just to echo your sentiment. So getting back on the tariffs, because I think that was a good segue, there's been many prominent thought leaders, in my opinion. I call these people thought leaders who have spoken out on the situation. There's been Elon Musk, of course, pretty much the face of electric vehicles in America, and some would say globally. He believes that tariffs should not be placed on anything in the energy sector. William Lee has obviously come out and spoke out against the tariffs. So I know there was some developments last week around the tariffs, but going all the way back, what was your initial reaction when you first heard about the tariffs?
The first reaction is one of the one of the rare times I will agree with Elon Musk, and the tariffs aren't a good idea. That being said, people should understand Neo class cars, Zeekr class cars, higher end cars are not what the European government or the US government are concerned about. They're concerned about is a BYD Seagull. That's a $12,000 retail car in China. And even if you put 100% tariff on it, it's now $24,000, $25,000 car. And guess what? To the average American, that's a cheap car. You have a hard time, you will have a hard time buying a car right now in the US in under $25,000. They're out there, but you know what you're getting. You know what you're going to get if you're spending less than 25,000. People have to buy them. There's everybody in the world is everybody who needs a car is not even middle class. So you think of a single parent somewhere working retail. You know, if China was to start bringing in $12,000 electric cars, the Americans would have a really hard time. The Europeans would have a really hard time. So things have to be done there. Tariff Tariffs or a duty are what a consumer pays, the price a consumer. No, it's what's enacted on a manufacturer in another country for the privilege of being able to sell in a specific country. So there's always going to be tariffs, and tariffs have levels. Again, I'm going to say I'm not a lawyer, but when you're paying a tariff, I own a business, and I own a business that occasionally does import, and you have to tell them what exactly you're going to be doing with the end product. Is it a fully for sale end product? Are you creating a product that's going to become another product that's going to be taxable? But anyhow, on the tariffs, number one, it's not China. If you put a tariff on China, China's not paying the tariff. The end user's paying the tariff, and the money is going into the government. So the government every government, needless to say, is going to like tariffs because it fills their treasury, right? But there's also a point of no return. So when we're talking EVs, what's the real game with tariffs? The real game with tariffs is you want to sell your cars here, you got to start building them here. Ditto for Europe, ditto for, believe it or not, Bangkok just raised hell about BYD bringing too many cars into their country. Bangkok. It isn't only the U.S. and it isn't only the U.S. and Europe that are concerned about it. It's any country that says they're going to prefer that product over our homemade product, our home built product, and consequently, we have to. In this case, they're trying to level the playing field. They're leveling the playing field while other things are going on. I'm calling this the great EV restart, where basically everybody, including Tesla, is getting sent right back to the starting line, okay? And they're all going to they're basically starting out all over again. Tesla's not only competing with the Tesla now, they're competing with Lucid, they're competing with Rivian, they're competing with GM, Ford, and unfortunately, Fisker just went out, but I'm trying to think. Another company just had, back to tariffs. Let's go back to tariffs. If you notice, right after the tariffs were imposed, Volkswagen beat feet to do a deal with Rivian. Prime Minister Meloni from Italy got right over to Italy and told them, come on, guys, come on over to Italy. We're waiting for you. President of Stellantis just got rights to manufacture Leap motors, which is an Econobox, by the way. That they are Econoboxes. He just got permission to build them in Europe, somewhere in Europe, so they won't be subject to Chinese taxes anyhow. Okay, this is what of the Ford Nautilus is built by Shangan, who happens to be a NIO partner, and that is I just saw him advertise. I don't know. That's a hybrid. I don't think it's an electric, but that's a high-end vehicle. That's top of the Ford line and big bucks, for somebody to buy. So they're facing the same they're going to face the same tariff. So the consumer's not going to like it. But the real end deal is the same thing as that Honda had to do, Hyundai had to do, um, uh, Kia had to do. You've got to build so many cars here, and in that tax game, companies like Polestar, who have heavy connections with Volvo, who do manufacture in the United States, they're going to have an edge because they're not going to be taxed the same way, and they could also do something what's called a breakdown kit, where, as I was just telling you, just the parts are going to get taxed. They could, and that's really what the U.S. our government, I'm quite sure, and the unions want. If you want to go, if you want to use Chinese, you want to be Chinese, bring the parts over here. Let us add value. If we could add value and everybody gets a piece of the pie, then everyone is going to be happy. So that's what the taxes are. But if we want to focus on NIO and taxes, they mean nothing. Right now, NIO sold in the bulk. They sold 32 cars in China, in Germany. They're not. They're just starting in Germany. They're just starting. They have under 25 charging stations. They're just starting. It's not their main trust. Meanwhile, BYD is sending cars out to non-US, non-European destinations by the boatload. And when I mean a boatload, it's a big boat. And you're going to see a lot of action in the Middle East. I'm surprised Americans aren't there already, but NIO has a UAE partner with major bucks, $3 trillion fund. I know I say it wrong, and then Aaron is going to chide me for it because I get the initials wrong, but it's CYVN, I believe. I think I was saying NB, but they have a lot of bucks, and they're behind another few tax things here. Lotus, English brand, Chinese owned, owned by Geely. They're gonna be made in England. So they're gonna use part of their plan, but the parts making is going to happen in Wuhan. So that is something, that's the Chinese and business people already doing workarounds. MG, English brand, could be manufactured. 47, like we've spoke about it in your last program, your last episode I was on. They are licensed with NIO technology. Whether they're going to do an exact NIO clone or they're going to, it's still, if that is coming from Europe, it gets treated the same way as a BMW. So if BMW can do it, 47 can do it. My guess is they will probably focus on the British market first. I know, I know enough about them to know I don't know enough about them. So, that's how they're going to get. That's how the taxes are going to be, gotten around. They're going to, Viktor Orban in Hungary. He's got a bill. BYD is building $1 billion plan in Hungary. So is he gonna do an import tax on Chinese cars that are being made in his backyard? Hardly. And why the heck you think BYD is there? And by the way, Hungary is EU and it's NATO. So if they want to send things, I think I'm not gonna I don't know what I don't even want to imagine what their last export to the US was, but those cars, those BYDs coming from Hungary are technically not Chinese. So that's how everybody, but basically the Americans are dealing with it. I know I can't think of the name now. The brand begins with a P, but it's a Chinese company that an American investment company just put $1 billion into them in China. So that's technically going to be and have an American entity. So that's another brand that might be coming back this way at a tax at a better rate. By the time I think NIO's strategy is probably by the time they make it into the United States, if they do in 2025, this is going to be settled. This is not something that's going to go on forever. It's not good for either economy. But I could tell you right now, uh, Democrat, Republican, don't matter. That you are not going to be putting in sub $20,000 Chinese cars into the U.S. in the foreseeable future. That's what they will keep out because they think that that is something that will do a number on the U.S. auto industry and Canadian auto industry as well. So we won't see that. But your Polestar's already has cars available in the U.S. And by the way, when I went out to drive NIO, um, I had a choice of multiple EVs that they let me mess around with. I wouldn't drive another electric car onto NIO's property. So I drove a regular ICE car to NIO. I did not want to bring an electric, but while I was in San Jose, I had a chance to drive a Kia, and it was pretty good. It wasn't a NIO, I
Yeah,
did that. It
when
was
I had just got back in
not a
town
NIO.
and I called it.
It was a nice, smooth electric car, but suspension wise and the way the car handled and absolutely speed was not, it wasn't a NIO. Maybe they may have governed them down at the rental agency at Hertz.
I mean,
I didn't see any Teslas when I was at Hertz.
even if you take a look at like the Envo L60 and you take features and benefits outside of it and you just look at styling, I think it wins big time in styling and obviously in price. No offense to Kia or anything.
It's not even close.
No
I
offense
mean,
to Kia or anything.
it's not the Tesla's fault. Just so you know, I mean, a Tesla Model 3 is essentially the same car it was in 2019. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's had some refreshes, but it looks like a Tesla.
Style wise, yeah.
And it does. But again, look, it's the number one selling electric car. So we could say whatever we want about it. They're still making money and they're going to make money. Tesla's not going anywhere, but Tesla will have much less share of the market as years go by. They'll be basically another car company.
Yeah.
They're
And
not gonna have them.
I think
Yeah,
that's a conclusion you can come to honestly just using common sense because if we look outside today, everyone doesn't drive the same car. So
right.
for some of these people on the internet to think that there's only going to be one winner and it's Tesla because Tesla's well far ahead of the
No way,
rest of
man.
the game.
Tesla's got to deal with
That's,
Tesla, GM, and everybody is still getting their battery, the majority of their batteries from China. That's all going to be taxable. So they're not going to stand for too long. But that's exactly so. You have a battery. Eventually, motors are going to be sold here. EVs, we could do a whole nother episode on EVs, represent such an incredible uh, potential economic boom that to me that will rival the internet. But unfortunately, not only the government, I'd also say the corporations, they don't bond together the way the Chinese do. The Chinese, um, Gilly talks to Gilly and Neo are good friends. Um, Lee just Lee and Neo they go back and forth. I think William Lee just got a van from Lee. William Lee just got a van from Lee as a gift, which the CEO paid out of his own pocket. He bought the car from his own company to give to William Lee. But they are they know the same thing the Americans knew 75 years ago. There's no need to keep reinventing a muffler. Once somebody makes a muffler and it works, we all can just license that muffler. Anti-lock brakes, ditto. Fuel injection, ditto. And the Chinese are just they're like that. And again, going back to taxes and availability, um, the government wants to put stiff tariffs on NVIDIA chips going over to China, and they also now NVIDIA is going to come out with Chinese versions that are government approved, right? NIO, again, we could do a whole other episode. NIO is right now in the final phases of their own chip, which they claim is. And by the way, don't confuse a chip, a digital chip, with a GPU, with a graphics processor unit. It's what they run the data centers on and what they run AI on. It's different. The chips that they're talking about that NIO is putting in the car has to do with automotive functionality. Does not have to. It doesn't have to do with. It doesn't necessarily have to do with guidance and any type of level of autonomy. It has to do with you still have to turn on the windshield wipers. You still have to do the steering, engine control. There's a lot of things that the computers have to do in an EV besides guidance, turning the wheels. Just to get the wheels to turn is going to take an instruction set and a device that doesn't have to do with the guidance. The guidance tells it what to do. So NIO is gone ahead and just doing their own chips. And once their chips, if their chips get proven, I would say that they will be for sale to any and every EV company that wants to use them and program them themselves. They'll do their own firmware.
What do you say to people who, because this is an opinion that's out there, that NIO should focus on their core competencies and leave the chip manufacturing to companies like NVIDIA,
Nope,
companies like
nope.
Intel?
The whole trick in NIO is they control almost all of their supply chain. Their batteries, again, you're not talking about customer sales, customer relationships. The Chinese call them partnerships,
Right.
and they one hand washes the other. The battery that very well could end up in a Tesla or in a GM product was developed. It's the semi-solid state battery right now. The battery that was developed by NIO and
Be
will
lying.
and CATL is going to manufacture it because they could, and that's what I'm talking about, licensing. I would imagine that being NIO is the first company to get it out on the road and test it for 1,000 kilometers, is going to get a royalty on every sale. The battery wouldn't be here without NIO, and it wouldn't be here without We Lion. And who put up the money, and who calls it losses? You know, the stock market calls it a loss. I call it putting your hands in every other competitor's pocket. That's what they're doing. You're not seeing it now. You'll see it next year. You're going to see it. NIO getting partners for battery swapping and say, well, none of them are swapping it. Well, some of them are. Some of them are. They do have one company right now that is going to do swapping, but they're getting them on NIO's charging network, and that's right now the most profitable area of NIO. 32% of NIO charges are done by either a BYD or a Tesla. 30, that's a third of them, right? The rest are NIO. But now you have all these partners who signed up, their battery swapping partners in the future. William Lee says it takes 2 years to get a car prepared to do swapping. That's right out of his mouth, 2 years. So they could sign battery swapping today, but you can be sure that right now, Geely, I know for sure, Geely's and other car are able to get on the NIO. They have the NIO charging app on their phone, and they go to NIO charging. So it's a good business for them. And
So
of course, by NIO building those charging facilities, not only swapping facilities, that's capital their competitor doesn't have to spend. So it's a win-win situation. They don't have to invent the wheel. Their customers get the advantage of thousands of charging stations, and NIO and I would imagine the car maker both get a cut of the profit. And those are your fuel stations of the future. And in China, they're the present.
still
And
having
most
their own chip, do you think that they're taking on too many high risk bets? Because I work in the data center business and I know that there's a lot of barriers to entry when it comes to getting into that space. NVIDIA is very dominant for the groundwork that they've laid over several decades, couple decades actually. Intel was always at the top. NVIDIA has their CUDA code that stops people in the data center business from going over to, let's say, like, let me get an Intel GPU or let me get an AMD GPU. No, we want to stick with NVIDIA. It's a safe bet. So how do you see NIO overcoming like that challenge
Well,
with
I
competitive
again, their purpose is an impressive automotive chip. They're not looking to dominate the chip industry. And while you mentioned Intel, just so you know, while I was at NIO, when you drive out of NIO's corporate headquarters, the first building you look straight ahead at is Intel's headquarters, right across the street. So Intel, while everybody's mocking them and the stock's taking an incredible beating, Intel is building two new plants in New York State that will give probably, I would say, 2.5, 3 years from now will be the talk of the town. The way
And don't get
NVIDIA
me
is.
wrong, Intel is still a viable company and it's not
Yeah,
going anywhere. I
you know
actually,
that. I just bought a new workstation. It's got Intel in it.
Mhm.
It's my preferred brand. I like AMD too, and it has an NVIDIA card in it, by the way. But I drove by the NVIDIA. We drove by the NVIDIA NVIDIA complex, and it's huge. While we were test driving the NIO, they're
Out
a
in New
neighbor right up the
Mexico
street.
a couple
Yeah,
weeks ago, and they built a plant out there as well. They're building plants everywhere right now because the AI opportunity is massive, and these companies that are ready for it have to position themselves to take advantage of it. And Intel is definitely still going to be prominent in this space. But when we look at the spaces
Intel
on,
isn't going anywhere, and AMD isn't going anywhere, and there's upstarts.
yeah, Qualcomm,
We haven't seen the last great chip maker in the U.S. or in China. China, NIO is worried. They know what they went through getting chips held in back in COVID. They were limited. They couldn't get parts, and so could nobody. Everybody had the same problem, and they're just saying, NIO supply chain again is very unique. They invest in a lot of their supply chains. Things like the suspension system, Clear Magic. No, these guys couldn't raise money in the United States, so NIO built them a plant. They built them a plant in China. So that is a suspension system that's on the that is going that's going to go on the ET9, and that suspension system is, if you've seen it, you could put they put champagne glasses on the hood and drive it over speed bumps, and the champagne stays there. What's going to compare to that? Well, because of the way the US and the stock markets work, where capital is, they squeeze you by the what to get you to raise capital. Where in China, it's not a problem. You could quickly, not quickly, but you could somewhat go and get a public bond and pay the bond back. It's not like that for, Rivian had to get help from Volkswagen, right? Fisker couldn't, you can you imagine nobody jumped in to bail out Fisker? It's wild. I'm surprised that a Japanese or Korean company didn't go in on that, being they already are here.
I think it had to
They
do a lot with market sentiment too. I mean, this isn't the first time, no offense to Fisker, this isn't the first time they've been in this situation. And then if you look at why they're actually in this situation, it's because a lot of things were mismanaged and mishandled, from their accounting policies to several other things, which doesn't really seem so attractive to investors. Since you brought that up, what's
Yeah,
your
but
thought on that?
when an investor goes in with enough cash, they get a lot of say. They usually and oftentimes get their own management. When NIO was able to get $2 or $3 billion from my initials that I can't say, CYVN, they have 20% of the shares, and who knows what they're doing with those shares. That might have some. The shares they bought at 750, now they could buy all they want for 360 or whatever it is. So that's amazing. But in any case, when they went into NIO and they sit on the board, they have a say. Money goes where money's welcome, and money talks wherever it goes.
Mhm. I agree
So
with you. And
what's their plan? Is it just to invest in NIO? I
I
probably think that they probably have very big plans back in their native country. in the UAE.
Surely.
I think that they will probably be selling them, marketing them in some way, unless 4.7 is going to be over there. But what I'm saying is that investors come in and they're going to be demanding the change on NIO's with NIO CFO when Stephen Fang left. Um, you can bet that the board members who hold 20% of the stake in the company had a lot to say over who's going to be the CFO. And it was interesting to see that the NIO CFO came from within the company, which shows that big money investor has confidence in the company and confidence in a man that was already with the company for, well, I think over 5 years, maybe 10 years. He's been around a while. Stephen Fang was around for a while. Stephen Fang wasn't really an accountant. He came from the auto industry, but I think he was from the parts industry. This particular their new CFO, again, I'm not Chinese. I don't want to offend anybody, so I don't try to say pronounce their names. But this guy, the current CFO is a trained accountant from the get-go, and he's been in NIO and he's seen Stephen Fang operate, and they know he's okay. And to me, that was a big vote of confidence. But again, that gives Shorts, they're changing CFO. The guy's running, man. He ain't running, the guy isn't running. Guy made his money and now he's moving on. Probably come back with another company. He'll probably come back with another company in a couple of years or maybe a couple of months. Who knows? Hopefully he doesn't have family issues and he's okay, because he did a good job. He kept NIO going, brought in a lot of capital, and also don't forget NIO Capital. NIO Capital is the reason that Clear Motion and We Lion and lots of other suppliers got their funding from NIO Capital. But what does it do? It makes them beholden to NIO. And several, I won't say a lot, but several and eventually many of those suppliers will be working at the main at F1 in Hawaii, and with tunnels that connect their manufacturing facility to the NIO production line. As quick as they can make it, it doesn't even need to go on a truck. It's going right through the tube, right into a NIO. So that's the way that the Chinese are innovating, and you're going to see the Americans and the Europeans emulating eventually as the shift happens. They still have a lot of legacy issues with ICE, and in this country, ICE is not going away as quick as EV enthusiasts want to see it go away, because there's a good percentage of the population that will never drive an EV, period.
So
let me just say, I've had a friendship broken over a guy who I told him, you will be driving an EV before you croak. And that was the last time we talked. He hung the phone up on me. And this is a guy who races, by the way. He races. And he said, there ain't no way I'm ever driving an EV, period. And he got upset with me and he hung up the phone. And that's the last time we spoke. Old friend, 20 years.
well,
But
you guys can patch
like
that
William Lee says, if you like the smell of diesel on your hand, what are we going to do about it? Some people like the smell of gasoline.
So one more, or maybe two more questions before we get you out of here. Obviously, we're in election season right now. The Biden administration, we're very aware of their stance on the tariffs. I want you to be as objective as possible when answering this question, because we try not to do too much politics on this channel. But how do you see the tariff situation playing out if Kamala Harris is elected and the kind of her new era of the Biden administration continues, or the Republican Party, Donald Trump?
It's a good question. It's real simple. They both have it wrong. They both should take a hard look at how China is doing business and take a look at that. They both sides have it wrong. It's funny. The liberal media puts down EVs every bit as much as the conservative media. They both put it down because they both have connections to big oil. And there's your problem, right? There's not your problem. That's a hurdle you have to go over. There's still enough Americans and enough American companies and European companies making money in oil and making money selling ICE cars and making money servicing ICE cars and building parts that they're not going to go away overnight. So both political parties, they don't just make stuff up. They answer to the people who put them the same way I was saying the investors call the shots at the board and at the companies. The people who pay taxes and who back the political parties have a lot to say. I would I would say this. Just remember, Kamala Harris comes from Silicon Valley. That's where she was a senator. That's where she was an attorney general. Um, no one should fool themselves by thinking Trump has more connections in Silicon Valley because of Vance. Vance is a newcomer to Silicon Valley. Most of these guys, the Gates and the Jobs and the Cooks, all of them go back 20, 30 years. And they are very connected to California politics, and they are typically liberal. I actually think that if Donald Trump, from a business sense of view, when he's shown the possibilities of economic profits that could be made with EVs, he will be on board. He's a businessman. He doesn't want to collect money for tariffs. He wants anyone who's going to be in the White House wants jobs and prosperity. He wants it. Ms. Harris wants it. I would say that it's a toss-up, simple from the reason neither one of them really understand it. There's not a czar yet in it's not Pete Buttigieg. He's not he's a good guy. He's he gets bridges fixed quick, and he gets a lot of problems solved. He's a good guy, not putting him down, but he doesn't have. They need someone with a very deep. They need someone who comes out of EVs to the same way the Chamber of Commerce operates. I mean, I'm sure there's some lobbying groups, but they're not unified and they're not getting the message across, and their candidates don't have a freaking clue. They don't realize the jobs that EVs could bring to their district. Clean jobs, relatively clean. I mean, any manufacturing is going to have, but everybody says lithium. First of all, lithium it's there's more lithium in the world than we think there is, by the way, and a lot of it ain't here. But there's lithium like supposedly in San Diego, in that area. But when I mean clean jobs, motor manufacturing, brake manufacturing, interiors, headliners, windshields, safety systems. There's so much that every country could contribute into an EV. So Tesla has the most modern, I think, the most modern type of supply chain and production in the U.S. But you could count that GM and Ford's going to catch up with it. They're all intelligent people. And they're making the cars now. And when they start advertising them like we're seeing now, people are going to buy them. They're not, an EV isn't for everybody, but a little EV,
Yeah.
whoever brings a little EV, a Toyota sized EV, and a real, like a smart car EV into the US that's reliable, if it's whatever company it is, they'll make a lot of money. An urban electric car is what the US really needs. It's just something. It's something that it's instead of a solution waiting for a problem, it's a problem waiting for a solution. If you drive in a major city, you know what I'm talking about. The,
When you
the
look at other countries, obviously there's a different I don't want to say political, but I want to say political mindset when it comes to electric vehicles. You mentioned that there's so much money in oil, and so there's that money that's going to support both parties, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. How do we get to the point where we get past all of the oil money that's essentially standing in the way of electric vehicles in this country?
Again, we really cut this episode up in a lot of ways, but I can tell you something right now. If you think the U.S. automotive companies are not prepared for EVs, I actually I'm in the technology business. Part of my business is consulting. I consult to some power entities and some suppliers to power units, and I could just tell you that the power companies are only one notch better than right now than the automotive companies in understanding what that transition from oil to power is going to take. And then, of course, the excuse is we cannot put that load on our grid. And people like me get paid to go in and convince them, why don't you update your grid? Why don't you start bringing more people to the energy party? And here's how you can do it. So the U.S. power companies are very much like the oil companies. They provide a great service to the country. Again, don't want to put them down, but I would tell any CEO at any power company, like, what exactly are you doing about EVs? And I could tell you some specific stories, but that for personal interactions I've had with power companies, they've been very disappointing. I have some of them now that are starting to, after laughing at me at first, are now actually making an outreach. We're actually having some conversation about getting some research done and start getting some hard numbers and figure out how it's really going to play out. But that's a sand on a piece of, it's not the power industry by and large. They're not moving in a direction where they can understand. They don't. NIO, again, it's another episode, but NIO and Tesla both have a big edge over everybody else in the game, and that's that they both have power divisions. They both have very good ideas for what else they could do with batteries besides put them in the vehicles. And they both have really good ideas. Where Tesla's not cutting it yet is on the generation side. NIO is looking into the generation side a lot, but Tesla is no slouch in batteries. It's just all of their batteries are connected to their car and their vehicles, and to get them off is a lot of money and a lot of time. And that's Tesla's EV power problem. But as far as their large scale batteries, which they just opened a large plant, they just opened a huge plant in China to make large scale industrial batteries. How are they getting? Are they going to be subject to the tax? Are they even coming here? There might be a big enough market for them in China that they don't need to. So that's, if you can make something in the same country, that's great. But you make a lot more money when you export it because you bring money into your economy. That's why China wants to export. China can sell as many EV, they're just getting their own money back. We sell only American cars here, we're only getting our money back. The American car company's heyday was when they were providing cars offshore all over Australia, Europe, Asia. That was their heyday. The Asians started building their own cars. They still want American cars, don't get me wrong. It's prestigious to drive an American car almost anywhere. But the governments have brought much of that manufacturing inland. And now, as we fight half of the country that doesn't want globalism, we find out that if you try to do everything in the US or in Europe or even in China, none of them have all the parts they need. They all need something that is not on their shore. And for that reason, you're going to see a lot more cooperation in the future. Necessity is the mother of invention.
Don't you find it interesting that huge oil company like Sinopec in China is willing to collaborate with a new energy vehicle manufacturer like NIO?
Yeah,
We're not seeing that type of collaboration
of
from
course.
American companies in America.
For two reasons. First of all, they get a carbon credit exchange in countries that have carbon credits. So there's carbon. The other thing is they're not blind. They have oil to sell. They also see companies like NIO selling 5,800 EVs a week, 20,000 a month. Tesla, BYD, holy smokes, 79,000 units. These are 79,000 units that are never going into a gas station. So you think Sinopec knows it? You think they know it? So NIO is a partner already, because another show for you there. Battery swapping is the closest thing that emulates a fill up. Do not tell me that you're going to see people pulling up to where there were gas pumps and pulling up to electric pumps. Someone's going to stand there for half an hour and hold the nozzle in. It ain't going to work like that. And if you live in a cold climate, you're only going to take so much of that bullshit for so long, getting out of your car in the middle of the winter, or charging up at home, or every time I go to I don't have many charging stations where I live, to be honest. But whenever I travel and I see one, I see them overpopulated. I see people waiting and people pissed off. So, what is the closest emulation to a fill up? It's Sinopec battery swapping boots. It's Shell Oil. Shell Oil is also a NIO partner. Shell Oil has 46,000 retail locations. Shell Oil is an absolute NIO partner. Again, early in the game, because they're still selling plenty of oil, but their chairman at the time, and this goes back, NIO and them, I think we're going back to 2020, when they made a partnership agreement. And they're you know they know that what the future is, but we know it isn't happening today. But Shell made it clear. We have 46,000 international locations, retail locations, and investors like myself look at it, again, we're long-term investors, and I look at it and say, that's 46,000 pieces of land that NIO doesn't have to buy to get a battery swapping station at, because they'll make a deal. They will NIO will they'll provide the property, NIO provide everything else. So that's what the future looks like. Shell has partnered with traditional cable charging, what we call cable charging companies, to build very nice, you know, 30, 40, 50 outlet. I saw one, it looked like it was 40 outlets. I don't, again, I see a lot of pictures. I don't remember the details of every, but I see one that it was, like a giant parking lot, and the cars had plenty of room to back out, that they wouldn't be hitting each other or whatever direction they were in. And it was nice. You could drive through, and it looked like there was obviously a snack bar. But if you're on your way to work in the morning, you ain't stopping in for a cup of coffee. You're going to get the cup of coffee on the road, or bring it with you, and you're stopping and getting your gas, and you're getting in and out of there in maybe 4.5 to 5 minutes. New Jersey, I have a pump wherever I want. There's always a pump available for gas. If I had an EV, if I don't do it at home, I honestly, in my county, I don't know where I would go, because there ain't no place to go. I have to go to the next county to charge up. And when I go there, it's full. It's got people waiting, people charging, and people waiting. And as somebody made a comment today, these charging stations make for some of the worst relationships you're ever going to see. Oh, I was here first. Oh, I was here first. There's no attendant. There's nobody there. So there's nobody to referee an argument. There's not an attendant that's going to serve one per. Even when there's an attendant, people get pissed. I was here before that person. So you know, battery. I am so positive that battery swapping will happen in the U.S., but it won't happen until a company like NIO, or multiple companies like NIO, all decide that they're going to go in and start building and build out themselves. I don't foresee at this point in time, I don't foresee an American power company getting into the game. I will tell you, it's job of people like myself and several consultants that I'm working with, to make them understand where the money is in battery swapping. But again, there's no cars here to battery swap with, so what are they going to do? And tell them put up a battery swap station, and maybe some car will show up someday. No, they're probably thinking in terms of 3 to 5 to 10 years to get into that, but they'll get into it. They're not going to have any choice. The system that works will be the system that wins. And I don't, again, you could charge a battery in 20 seconds and whistle Dixie while you're doing it. when that when that battery goes, you're buying it. You own it, and your car is shit. Your EV is done. So it doesn't matter how fast you charge it. It's how long will it last? The faster you charge it, chances are the less it will last. According to Tesla, they don't even want you to do a full charge. But um, the other thing about a battery swap, well, let's say right now, I read almost every day somebody's got a faster battery. Somebody's either it's in research or they want to put it into production, and I say that's great. And then I think to myself, well, what happens next year when that same company comes up with another battery, but you own the battery that they bought that they made last year? That's not going to be a NIO owner's problem, because that latest battery is going to be right in your car, as long as your EV, as long as it fits in your EV and it operates with, whether it's 200, 400, 800 volt system. If it fits and it works and it charges fast, that's better for everybody. But the battery that's in a 4 or 5 year old Tesla is a battery that's 4 or 5 years old, and it's technology that's 10 years old. So the latest, if I have the latest Tesla, if I buy it tomorrow, and many others, Lucid, Rivian, they could put the latest battery in it today. It will not be the latest battery tomorrow. And when someone goes to trade it in, it will be relevant to the age of that battery or the capabilities of that battery, because the capabilities are going to change. Now, when the Envo comes out very soon, Envo is only going to be able to charge or swap it, I think, 1,000 stations. Not every, I think it's the latest generation. It has to be the latest generation, or I think one back. But they have 1,000. A NIO is going to have over 2,000. So that'll be a shortcoming for Envo. But again, strategically, the company will probably try to sell Envos where those stations are the most available. And the next thing I could tell you is, like I said, we could have one more show. Envo is going to be a major export. It's going to be all over it's going to be, to me, it's the next Corolla, until someone comes out with it better, and it comes out with something that's better, and being, it ain't going to be a robo taxi. A robo taxi has a limited audience. There's only so many hacks in every city. So Model 3, Zeekr, Geely, Polestar, they'll all be competitors for an Envo, but I don't think they're going to have I don't think they are right now going to have the build quality, or they won't have the build quality, and they won't have the features. It's an Envo is a car that sleeps a family of three. It's not many cars that could do that. That's
At that
not
price point,
Yeah, there's not a
especially.
lot of cars that could do that at any price point. You buy an Excursion or a Navigator, and you could sleep a family of three in there. You're not going to do it in my car, unless we all fall asleep sitting up. So, um, NIO innovation is just, I could just tell you, you would hear the sound system in a NIO. It's freaking unbelievable. The seats giving, massaging you, which I was just in a Ford pickup that had seats that massage. But the NIO was something else. The sound was something else. The instrumentation and what you can see in the NIO is just, it's unbelievable. The LiDAR gives you 3D, not like you're seeing 3D now, but when you're sitting next to an 18-wheeler, you're sitting you could see right on the dash that there's an 18-wheeler next to you, and there's another one behind him, and there's a motorcycle going across the intersection without looking out the windshield.
Tesla
It's
does do that too.
what?
Tesla does do that too.
Well, it does it too. It doesn't have level 4 guidance in it either. So and by the way, it doesn't have LiDAR. So it really doesn't, it has a camera system it does that, but doesn't do it like a NIO does it. It doesn't do it with LiDAR. I mean, those images are jet fighter quality. And I'm sure the ones in the I've been in a Tesla. I mean, they're really good. I'm just telling you, I think Neo stuff is it pop your eyes out.
Wow.
It's really something else. And of course, know me. There's no other car that has that. It's amazing. It's none of us are amazed at technology anymore. We're more or less we're impressed with it. But you're going to see a lot of features in the future. Many Neo features will filter into other vehicles. They'll be licensed. Neo holds again. I'm not the Neo fan club, but Neo holds NIO, Tesla, BYD all hold a lot of patents. I think Lucid holds a lot of patents. They're not even close to NIO, but they patent. Lucid has great stuff to talk about. They, they don't have humanoid robots walking around the factory. I tell you that much.
Mhm.
So to me, Lucid is a custom built car for wealthy people, and they are exactly what they should be, and it's going to be a great company when they get some volume going.
I'm pretty sure
They
they
are
have.
a great company. I think they're a great company that they just accomplished it. What they were able to do in the amount of time. Um, both Ford, both Ford and GM have both recruited ex-Lucid supply chain people. Okay, they both have taken in people. One took in a CFO, and one took in an but they both know that Lucid has already gone through this process of the startup, and they consider their lines. That's how they're starting to treat them. Their EV lines like a startup. So they're a lot more aggressive. I'm very impressed with what Chevy has, even though we're talking about Neo. You know, Chevy's making a good stab at it. Ford's making a good stab at it, and I'm hoping to see Neo and a U.S. manufacturer, at least a U.S. distributor, um, get together before 20, late 20. It's not going to be around the corner. Neo Envos may also come in to the U.S. with another brand on them.
That's
They
very
they may not
possible.
be say may not have any Neo Envo L60 branding on them at all. So you'll see that, and whatever the tariff's going to be, it's going to be.
Well,
They
thank
can't.
you,
They're not
Marty.
going to build that car. That car right now can't be built for the price in the U.S. what is built in China. Parts could be made in China, and
Way too expensive.
yeah,
I watched Donut's video of them reviewing.
also operational. Your operational expenses of owning that car in the U.S. EV insurance is not cheap,
Mhm.
so that's another hurdle Americans will have to go over. But Tesla drivers are getting over them. So will GM, and so will who knows what brands coming down the road. We don't, like I said, somebody just invested $1 billion, an American company. It wasn't a Chinese company putting $1 billion into an American or European company. It was an American company. Next time I see you, I'll have the name of it. If I had time to look, I'd pull it up now, but I read it, and I thought it was interesting that to see money going the other way.
Yes,
So,
send me that article when you get a chance. I like to take a look at it.
okay.
But yeah, I don't want to make this too long, but thank you, Marty, for coming on here, sharing.
Yeah, you're probably going to want to cut some of that stuff down, Obi. It's
Okay.
great being with you. It's nice having a conversation. I hope one or two viewers get something out of it. We gave them some
Oh,
information.
I'm
They
sure it'll be more than one or two. It was very good information, good conversation. So
okay. Have a great time, great night. See you next time.
thank you. You as well.
All right,
Bye.
let's just say have a great night. See you next time.
Have a great night. See you next time.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.